My reflections for this talk come from a very famous poem by Percy Shelley. You see in the background 2 legs without a trunk and the head in the sand. And on the pedestal these words appear, "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." There's the rest of the poem. But moving forward to 2003, we have the leader of the free world saying, "We're the United States of America, for God's sake, the most powerful nation in the history." Not in the world, in the history of the world. The history of the world. But I think it's good to look at a bit of the state of the empire. Just running through a few things that were not even mentioned in the presidential debate. What about fertility? Here are fertility curves, actually for all of the world, from the 1950s, and then on the bottom, the blue line is up to 2010. The population bomb has fizzled. The United States fertility is about 1.7 children per woman, and the replacement value is 2.3. The word unsustainable comes to mind. What about the state of our health? Cancer has been fluctuating, but there was an inflection point in 2021, something that baffles the medical establishment, but since that time the incidence of cancer has been heading upward, as has the incidence of heart disease, and now pediatricians are having to learn how to treat children with heart attacks. What about fitness? The blue area there, or the gray area, is the projected number of disabilities, but that too has been rising in the number of disabled persons per 1,000 population. The United States is now going to start registering people automatically for the draft, maybe even including women, but 77% of young Americans would not qualify for military service. Means only about 23% would. What about our state of solvency? The debt has accelerated at an absolutely alarming rate straight up, and the deficit has been increasing into the trillions. At the current time, the interest that we have to pay on that debt is about equal to our entire military budget. What about our technology? Who is building nuclear reactors? On the top there is China, second is India. Down at the bottom, the United States and Bangladesh are about on par. Bangladesh has as much nuclear generating capacity as the US for half the population who are extremely poor. Global share of renewable energy that's supposed to take over the fuels that are powering 80% of the world's energy needs. By renewable, they mean wind and solar. And that's barely up at all, despite the trillions invested. What about the state of education that people place so much emphasis on when they're talking? The number of engineers graduated is greatest in Russia. The United States is second, according to this, but if you look on down the line, on a per capita basis, Vietnam graduates more engineers per capita, about 1 in 1,000, compared with the United States, which is only about 0.7 in 1,000. And what about just general wealth? This is the graph of purchasing power parity, which is considered by some to be better than the gross domestic product. This is not per capita, but for total wealth, China is at the top, the United States is second, India is third, and startlingly, Russia, despite or because of American sanctions, is fourth. Russia is exceeding Japan and Germany. Farm production. What about food security? The cost of raising crops in the United States is increasing dramatically thanks to our EPA protecting the planet. Some 55% of American farms are below critical margins, and we now have 20 million fewer acres under cultivation than we had 5 years ago. Well, the US military, of course, is invincible. These are the bases, American bases in the Middle East. Now, Britannia may have one time ruled the waves. The United States Navy cannot protect shipping in the Red Sea because of the Houthi rebels in Yemen. It is true that the US Navy has shot down most of the Houthi projectiles, not all of them, but their magazines are running short, and Amazon Prime does not do overnight deliveries of billion-dollar rockets to the Red Sea. So the ships are having to come back to port, and container ships, 30% of which used to go through the Suez Canal, are taking a 4,000-mile detour around Africa. But, of course, we control the air. And people say that Ukraine would have thrashed Russia, except we were so stingy with our Wunderwaffen, our miracle weapons, and we only just now sent them some ATACMS missiles, and the Biden regime now permits their use against targets inside Russia. Reportedly, 5 of them were quite recently fired at Crimea. 4 of them were shot down by Russian air defenses, and the 5th released cluster munitions over Avast and Sevastopol, which were a beach where families were enjoying a holiday. And then the next step would be the F-16, which is supposed to be on its way and is nuclear capable. Russia has said they are going to respond. They haven't said exactly how. Some say Putin is bluffing. Some say Russians don't play poker, and Science magazine says the risk of nuclear war has not been so high since the Cuban Missile Crisis. If you've been coming to DDP for a long time, you know we used to talk a lot about what was in Soviet military power, which was released periodically. But things do change. This was the 1988 edition. And we have learned at our tour of the Cradle of Air and Space Museum at our 2012 meeting in Long Island, the US no longer has a strategic triad. We have submarines. The nuclear warheads are radioactive. That means they decay. We haven't tested any since the 1990s. Rocket fuel deteriorates, and so does expertise. A speaker at a DDP meeting told us that when they were doing an exercise, they couldn't figure out how to get the lid off the silo, the Minuteman silo. And I have been told that the Russian solid fuel rockets will explode on launching, and they can't refuel them because the solid fuel factory was sabotaged. So nuclear weapons are, of course, still a very grave danger, but there's no more Dr. Strangelove possible, I don't believe, but there's certainly weapons that could do a huge amount of damage. But even without nukes, there are other threats to our security. This is Kurt Schlichter's latest book, The Attack. He must have been writing at lightning speed after October 15th. But one of the very alarming scenarios in this book is the Beslan school siege in 2004. Most Americans have never heard about it. You would have learned about it in 2018 from Chris Farrell at our meeting. This was a siege in Russia. This is a memorial at the gymnasium, the school where it occurred. 1,100 hostages, more than 300 fatalities. What if we have sleeper cells from people coming into our country, all over the country, who could launch something like this, 100 of them all at once? What then? At the 60th anniversary of Queen Victoria's reign, Rudyard Kipling, who was probably one of the greatest advocates of the British Empire, presented this poem to her. Far called, our navies melt away. On dune and headland sinks the fire. Lo, all our pomp of yesterday is one with Nineveh and Tyre. Judge of the nations, spare us yet, lest we forget, lest we forget. And the last verse of the poem is, for heathen heart that puts her trust in reeking tube and iron shard, all valiant dust that builds on dust and guarding, calls thee not to guard. For frantic boast and foolish word, thy mercy on thy people, Lord. So things look pretty impossible, but impossible things have happened, and I'd like to play just a snippet of a very important interview about an impossible thing. El Salvador, once the murder capital of the world, in just 3 years has become the safest nation in the Western Hemisphere. This is a snippet of an interview of Tucker Carlson interviewing El Salvador President Bukele.
Just bottom line it for us. What's the formula?
Well, I can tell you the official formula and the real formula. So the official formula is that we did a plan. I mean, we did a plan. It's not that. When I say official, I mean it's a lie. It's just, the official one.
What's the real?
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle.
Yeah, it's a miracle.
I love that. What do you mean?
Yeah, it's a miracle. When gangs started attacking us back, basically, they killed 87 people in 3 days. It would be the equivalent of 5,000 murders in the US in 3 days. The problem with the gangs is that they don't only attack their objectives. When they want to create terror, they can attack anyone. So they can actually kill their grandma.
Yes.
And it's your victim.
Yes.
Because they don't care about their grandma. You care about their grandma, so it's your victim. If they kill their grandma, you have one death, and they have, they achieved the terror that they want to create. So they can kill anybody. A woman walking by, a guy working in the street, a taxi driver. They can kill anybody. And if the state goes after them, the state has no intention of killing or harming anybody, but the gang members. So you have 70,000 objectives, which were the 70,000 gang members, but they have 6 million possible targets. Yes, but it was an impossible task, because you have to go after them. They were intertwined with the population, they were everywhere, and they were killing randomly. So how do you stop them? So we really tried to figure out what to do. We're looking into an impossible mission here. So we prayed.
You prayed in the meeting?
Yes, of course, several times, yeah.
What did you pray for? To the
wisdom, to win the war, to have, I thought at the time that we would have civilian casualties. So we prayed that the civilian casualties will be as low as possible. And we didn't have any civilian casualties.
And was everyone in the meeting comfortable with that?
Yes. All my security cabinet are believers. They all believe in God. We're a secular country, of course, but we all believe in God. So yeah.
MS-13 is one of the major gangs.
And they are satanic also.
So a miracle occurred there. At the founding of the American Republic, many miracles occurred. George Washington was not killed at the Battle of Monongahela, even though there were 4 bullet holes in his coat and 2 horses were shot out from under him. A dense fog enabled his troops to escape from Brooklyn Heights. Many miracles have been recounted. Actually, I think this meeting is somewhat of a miracle, because for 42 years, American defenses and science have been under attack, and yet we have people in this room who are doing really miraculous work, and we're going to hear from a lot of them. But those of us who are not capable of that sort of thing, just because we can't do something great and important doesn't mean we are no excuse for not doing something. So we see here's something that this little guy did. Also, I think it's very important that we not become glum and humorless like the enemy. I'm fixing to get in trouble. Are you coming? So please enjoy the meeting.